Click, beep, sip, jaw drop. That's the order it happened in. My security cam triggered with a soft click, the alert beeped on my phone, I took a lazy sip of coffee, then my jaw hit the floor. There she was, Karen, the president of the HOA. Not outside, not lurking at the property line with her usual binoculars and clipboard. No, she was in my sauna. Wrapped in a towel, reclined on the bench like she'd booked a luxury spa session, sipping straight from a bottle of rosé and humming along to my meditation playlist. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts. She had cucumber slices on her eyes, a Bluetooth speaker in her tote bag, and the audacity of a medieval queen claiming someone else's castle as her own. She didn't even try to sneak. She moved like she owned the place. And the worst part? She leaned into her phone and whispered, "He'll never know. This place is basically community property." That was the moment my coffee turned bitter in my mouth. And that was the moment I decided Karen needed to learn what private really means, preferably in a cloud of skunk gas. My property isn't just a house, it's a buffer zone between me and the rest of the world. I'm a combat veteran, tours overseas, years of high alert, adrenaline burnout, and too many nights waking up to things that weren't there anymore. I didn't come back to settle into chaos, I came to find peace. So I bought a parcel of land on the very edge of the HOA boundary. Not just physically out of their reach, but legally bulletproof. I made sure of it. Deeds, exemptions, a notarized exclusion letter from the zoning board. I even had it laminated and joked about tattooing it on my leg. Peace of mind. And then I built the sauna, by hand. Every cedar board was hammered in with sweat, sawdust, and the quiet sort of intention that comes when you're reclaiming yourself. That sauna wasn't a luxury. It was a therapy room, a cocoon, a reset chamber that smelled like wood and progress. So when Karen invaded it like she was checking into a day spa, she didn't just trespass on my property, she broke into the one space I built for silence. The one space I'd earned. Karen and I go way back. She introduced herself the day I moved in by handing me a copy of the HOA handbook, annotated in red ink, and suggesting I reconsider my porch lights if I cared about the visual harmony of the street. They were solar-powered LEDs with an amber glow, not spotlights, not stadium bulbs, but that didn't matter. Karen believed in enforcement like it was a religion. The second offense? My oak tree, ancient, majestic, rooted deep into my yard. Karen claimed its shadow violated the aesthetic perimeter standards, whatever that meant. I came home one afternoon to find her hired landscaping crew with ladders already halfway up my tree. I made a few phone calls and they scattered like squirrels in a lightning storm. Then there was the block barbecue. I skipped it. PTSD makes me weird around crowds. Karen responded by publicly suggesting I was antisocial and suspicious. At an HOA meeting, in front of everyone, and through all of this, her face never cracked, not once. She smiled through her crusades like she was on the cover of a gardening magazine. If HOA power were currency, Karen thought she was the Federal Reserve. The camera footage didn't lie, it caught everything. First, she crept around the cedar trees like she was on a secret mission. Towel already tucked under one arm, wine bottle swinging from the other. Then, like she'd done it 100 times, she reached under the flower pot, found the backup key I forgot I even left there, and opened the sauna door. She walked in like she was entering a boutique hotel suite. The Bluetooth speaker came out of the bag first. She connected it to my internal system, overriding my carefully curated spa playlist with something called Zen Goddess Vibes Volted 3. Next came the wine, rosé, straight from the bottle, no glass. She sprawled across the bench, propped up her feet, and sighed like Cleopatra, settling in for a steam. And then, God help me, she said it. Into her phone like it was no big deal. You'll never know, this place is basically community property. That's when it hit me. This wasn't her first time. She didn't just break in once. She'd turned my sanctuary into her regular retreat. And she'd done it with the same smugness she used to find people for mismatched bird feeders. The footage ended with her slipping on her sandals, tossing the key back under the pot, and walking off with a satisfied smile. I sat there, phone in hand, shaking with a mix of disbelief and fury. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the video burned into my brain. Her towel. Her smirk. That smug, lazy whisper. He'll never know. I had spent years learning to breathe through the rage. Combat taught me patience. Civilian life had tested it. But this wasn't just disrespect. This was an invasion, dressed in spa slippers. And I started asking myself the hard question, if I let this go, what comes next? Does she start hosting book club in my sauna? Does she add it to the neighborhood tour as an amenity? No. If I stayed silent, what else would she take? That's when the idea started to form. Not something violent, not something illegal, but something poetic. I called Darren, a buddy of mine who now runs Wildlife Control. A few years back, he helped me clear a skunk den under my deck. I remembered the scent diffusers they used. Non-toxic, legal, absolutely vile. Still got one of those skunk blasters? I asked. Darren paused. Then he laughed so hard I thought he'd drop the phone. You're gonna skunk trap a Karen? Not trap, I said. Just educate. He promised to send me the equipment, and suddenly I had a plan. 2 days later, the package arrived. A scent diffuser disguised like a regular humidifier. I wired it discreetly under the sauna bench and synced it to a remote trigger on my phone. One press, and the diffuser would release a synthetic skunk scent, so potent it could clear a raccoon convention. Harmless, legal, but unforgettable. I re-angled the motion cameras, tuned the audio, and added a small sign inside the door. Welcome, unauthorized guests may experience unexpected aromas. It wasn't just about the prank, it was about making a point. That sanctuary wasn't up for grabs. It wasn't shared, it wasn't community. It was mine. The trap was ready, the bait was confidence. And Karen? She was the kind of woman who never said no to a free spa. I smiled, sat back, and waited. Because this wasn't about revenge. This was about reclaiming peace, with a punchline. Setting up the trap was almost meditative. I spent the better part of the day installing extra motion sensors around the cedar trees, re-angling my outdoor cameras, and wiring the skunk scent diffuser discreetly under the sauna bench. The device was barely the size of a shoebox, but packed enough olfactory punch to make a skunk blush. I synced the whole system to my phone. One press of a button, and Karen's spa day would transform into a chemical warning from the gods of personal space. It felt strangely familiar, like setting up perimeter defense on patrol, only this time, it was for a trespassing suburban tyrant instead of insurgents. The whole thing was ridiculous if you thought about it too long, like setting a squirrel trap if the squirrel wore pearls and cited bylaws while stealing your property. Before I could even finalize the setup, Karen struck again. This time, it was pettier than ever. I opened my door to find a violation notice fluttering in the breeze, taped neatly to the side of my mailbox. Apparently, my private property sign on the sauna door was visually disruptive to community cohesion. The notice included a photo, complete with red circles and exclamation points, as if I'd spray-painted a skull and crossbones on a toddler's jungle gym. The irony was staggering. She broke into my sanctuary, and now she was fining me for labeling it off-limits? It was the HOA equivalent of someone stealing your lunch and then writing you up for not sharing. That was the moment I realized it wasn't enough to repel her. She needed to be exposed. The monthly HOA meeting was the perfect stage. I showed up early, dressed in a collared shirt, clipboard in hand, not to blend in, but to mimic the uniform of her nonsense. The room buzzed with stale coffee and suburban politics. Karen presided at the front, arms folded, smug as ever. When the new business section opened, I stood. I have footage of unauthorized use of private property, I said, calmly. Karen barely flinched, but as I connected my tablet to the projector and played the video, everything changed. There she was, towel and all, pouring wine, adjusting the Bluetooth speaker, and saying with that signature smirk, "He'll never know." The room went dead silent. Then came the gasps, a few stifled laughs. Karen stood, stammering. It looked inviting, she insisted. There weren't proper signs. The audience didn't buy it. Someone muttered, "Looks like trespassing to me." Even the board president, a usually stone-faced retiree named Harold, raised an eyebrow and asked, "You thought a locked sauna behind a privacy fence was a public amenity?" Karen's jaw worked like a fax machine failing to send. The board tabled the issue pending review, but the damage was done. I went home that night and tightened the screws, literally. I reinforced the sauna door with a new self-closing mechanism, installed a second hidden camera inside to catch every angle, and rewired the diffuser to activate at the perfect moment. The inside cam was small, mounted near the vent, capturing a direct line of sight to the bench. "A stage needs lights, a trap needs angles," I muttered as I tested the camera feed, making sure every second would be recorded in glorious high definition. I even adjusted the diffuser dosage slightly, just enough to simulate skunk warfare without turning the place into a biohazard zone. The final touch? A new sign, tastefully engraved. "Private means private. Enter at your own risk." It wasn't a threat, it was a prophecy. 2 days later she came back. Right on cue, I saw the motion alert ping, opened the live cam feed, and there she was, towel in place, wine bottle in hand, humming like she was about to get a hot stone massage from the gods. She moved with theatrical confidence, slipping inside like she owned the place. She even brought a new playlist this time, something with pan flutes. It was like watching a recurring character in a sitcom who hadn't read the updated script. She reclined, set down her rose, turned up the volume, and leaned back with a satisfied sigh. What she didn't know, what she'd never see coming, was that the aroma of humility was just a button press away. My finger hovered over the phone screen. The diffuser was armed, the sauna was sealed, the stage was set. And that's when she screamed, loud enough for the HOA bylaws to flutter off the table. She exploded out of the sauna like a startled raccoon, shrieking, flailing, towel flapping like a wounded flag in the wind, her face still smeared with the remnants of a cucumber mask, twisted in horror as the skunk scent wrapped around her like the world's worst hug. She gagged, slipped, nearly lost her grip on the wine bottle, and staggered barefoot through the grass, leaving a trail of foot-shaped steam clouds behind her. My camera outside caught it all, every squawk, every sprint, every disbelieving screech. Across the street, my neighbor Jerry happened to be filming with his phone while watering his roses. He later said it looked like a wine-drunk banshee at Coachella trying to outrun her own entitlement. Karen screamed all the way to her front lawn and disappeared behind her front door, like she'd just survived a medieval curse. 15 minutes later, flashing lights rolled up. 2 police officers stepped out, one visibly trying not to laugh. Karen, now wrapped in a bathrobe in righteous indignation, gestured wildly at my house, claiming I'd booby-trapped a relaxation chamber and launched an unprovoked chemical assault. I greeted them calmly with a flash drive in hand. "I think you'll want to see this before you file anything." We stood in my living room as I played the footage. Karen trespassing, Karen lounging, Karen saying, "He'll never know," and then Karen setting off the diffuser. The younger officer snorted, the older one shook his head. "Ma'am," he said, returning to her porch, "you gas-bombed yourself in a place you weren't supposed to be." Karen started ranting about bylaws and shared spaces until he cut her off. "Private property means just that. You're lucky it wasn't an actual skunk. No charges filed. Against me, anyway." By sunrise the next morning, Karen had become a legend. Jerry's footage hit the neighborhood Facebook group first. Within hours, it was on TikTok with a sound remix of her scream looped over a dubstep beat. Another user added pan flute music to her sprint and titled it Spa-Nick Attack. The comments ranged from poetic to brutal. "Skunked by karma. That's what happens when HOA House turns into FBI. Her chakras weren't ready." Someone even set her scream to the Jurassic Park theme and posted it under Steam Room Karen. She trended harder than HOA dues after a fence color violation. My phone blew up with texts and DMs. Even the barista at my local coffee shop winked and asked, "You selling that skunk mist yet?" I wasn't, but I was considering it. Karen, of course, tried to retaliate. 2 days later, I received a cease and desist letter, allegedly written by her brother-in-law, a self-proclaimed attorney whose name didn't appear on any state bar registry. The letter was a glorious mess typed in Comic Sans, filled with misspellings and signed with legal regards. It accused me of biological warfare, reputational sabotage, and traumatic olfactory harm. I forwarded it to my actual lawyer, who read it twice, then laughed for 5 straight minutes. "This reads like HOA Mad Libs," he said. "Did she draft this during a wine tasting?" We chose not to respond formally. Instead, I added it to a growing binder labeled Exhibits A through Z, Why Karen Shouldn't Run Anything. That binder came in handy sooner than expected. After the video went viral, neighbors started talking. Then they started sharing. Turns out I wasn't the only one with a Karen horror story. One man said she fined him for aggressive IV shadow casting. A mom recounted being cited for excessive sidewalk chalk artistry. Harold, who rarely spoke at meetings, stood up at a local gathering and declared she once tried to ban wind chimes, said they disrupted HOA harmony. The stories kept coming. Ridiculous, invasive, borderline cruel. As one woman put it, she's been writing citations like she's on a power trip with a clipboard. The difference now? People were finally ready to push back. We weren't just taking back the sauna, we were reclaiming sanity. The board called a special meeting. A vote was coming, and this time it wasn't about rules. It was about removing the tyrant who had mistaken a neighborhood for her kingdom. The emergency HOA meeting was standing room only. Folding chairs scraped across the clubhouse floor as neighbors, some I barely knew, filed in with manila folders, USB sticks, and decades of simmering resentment. Chad, the board member who'd once shrugged helplessly about Karen's antics, now stood firm at the front. "This isn't just about skunk gas," he began, holding up a stack of printed citations. "This is about a pattern of abuse, of control, of tyranny in Capri pants." The crowd murmured in agreement. One man raised a laminated violation notice for wind-propelled decorative items, which turned out to be a single American flag. Another read aloud a citation for unauthorized laughter past 9 p.m. And then came the photos. Karen measuring grass with a ruler, Karen pointing at solar lights with a level, Karen glaring at a child's inflatable pool like it owed her rent. The room buzzed with stories that had festered for years. When the motion was introduced to remove Karen as HOA president, the vote wasn't even close. A sea of hands rose without hesitation. Chad tallied the count, nodded once, and then looked to Karen. "Effective immediately, you are removed from your position." Karen, already red-faced, slammed her clipboard on the table like it was a gavel from hell. "This is illegal," she shouted, her voice cracking. "You're all just jealous of order." Someone near the back whispered, "We're allergic to your order." Karen grabbed her faux leather tote, muttered something about defamation and lawsuits, and stormed out of the clubhouse. Her heels clacked with fury all the way to the parking lot. The front door slammed behind her like the last note of a bad sitcom. The room burst into applause. A new president was voted in. Ray, the firefighter with the Pop-Tart raccoon story. Finally, sanity had a spokesperson. Of course, Karen didn't go quietly. Within days, I received notice from the county. Karen had filed a formal complaint alleging I had installed a chemical weapon on residential property. She claimed the Skunk diffuser was a tactical neurotoxin delivery system and demanded my property be condemned. The inspector who showed up at my door was polite, professional, and looked deeply amused. "I had to see it myself," he said, glancing at the diffuser. "You know, this is literally sold at feed stores for coyotes, right?" I nodded, handed him documentation, and even showed him the footage. He laughed. "Coyote repellent is not chemical warfare. I've had people report hypnotic wind chimes, but this is a new one." The county dismissed the complaint. Karen's environmental warfare claim had skunked itself. But she wasn't done swinging. Her next move? She tried to file a restraining order against me. She claimed I had created an environment of olfactory terrorism and that I weaponized sensory input with malicious intent. The judge denied her petition without a hearing. According to someone at the clerk's office, the staff read it twice and had to excuse themselves to the hallway to finish laughing. One clerk even reportedly said, "Did she seriously write PTSD from aromatherapy?" Karen had officially run out of believable lies and semi-coherent letters. The legal system, it seemed, had a skunk-scented nonsense threshold, and she'd just blown past it. Words spread fast. A Reddit post titled, "My HOA president broke into my sauna and got skunked," hit the front page within hours. Screenshots of Karen's Comic Sans cease and desist were passed around like collector's items. Someone created a subreddit, r/skunkjustice, dedicated to HOA horror stories and creative revenge. It exploded overnight. People shared tales of lawn wars, decorative gnome bans, and neighborhood newsletter dictatorship. The skunk story became a symbol not just of petty revenge, but of reclaiming dignity against clipboard-wielding tyrants. One user wrote, "This is the energy we need in 2024. No yelling, no threats, just legal, smell-based justice." Peace returned to the block. The sauna glowed warmly behind the cedars again, untouched and respected. No new notices appeared on my door, no mysterious zoning complaints, just quiet evenings and grateful neighbors. But as I sat on my porch sipping my coffee, I couldn't help but smirk. She thought she could win with paper. She forgot I had video. Karen wasn't done. You'd think a public dethroning, internet humiliation, and a failed attempt at framing me for chemical warfare would have knocked the wind out of her clipboard, but no. She doubled down. Her final chapter didn't involve meetings or legal letters. This time it got personal. One night, a neighbor, sweet old Mr. Barnes, whose biggest vice was overfeeding the birds, found an anonymous complaint filed with the HOA demanding his removal from the community. The reason? Irresponsible use of avian feed leading to potential rodent infestation. It was Karen. Everyone knew it. The timing, the wording, the sheer desperation screamed of her style, but that wasn't even the worst of it. A few days later, I stepped out to find a weird smear on the sauna's cedar wall. Something graffiti, fishy, and definitely not weather-made. It wasn't graffiti. It was subtle sabotage. Some kind of tuna oil blend, maybe? A coward signature? Cameras showed a hooded figure, fast and clumsy, vanishing into the darkness. No face, but the posture. Karen. Always Karen. But this time the neighborhood wasn't passive. The people she used to bully had found their backbone. Harold installed motion lights that lit up like prison flood lamps. Susan added a recording of barking dogs to her porch sensor, set to full volume. Chad handed out free driveway cameras from a bulk pack he just happened to order. Within 2 nights, Karen couldn't take a single step outside without triggering a symphony of LED spotlights and woofing echoes. She didn't even get the dignity of darkness anymore. The street had turned against her, not violently but surgically. Polite revenge, coordinated boundary enforcement. One neighbor whispered, she couldn't walk without the neighborhood lighting up like Times Square. Karen wasn't being harassed, she was being watched. Legally, openly, and she hated it. You could see it in the way her blinds stayed closed, her steps quickened, her complaints dried up. She had lost her power, and we made sure she remembered every second of it. Then came the morning we'd all been waiting for. A moving truck pulled into her driveway. Quiet. No announcement, no garage sale, no weird farewell speech about losing her battle to complacency, just boxes. Plain, brown, silent boxes. A few neighbors peeked through blinds like kids at Christmas. No one said a word, but the mood was unmistakable. Cautious celebration. Like the final villain in a trilogy quietly packing her cloak. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand, not gloating, just present. Karen never waved, never even looked toward my house, at least not at first. But when the last box was loaded, and her precious clipboard was the final item she placed into her back seat, she did glance up. One final look. Her eyes met mine. I gave her a small wave. Not smug, just polite. Human. She didn't return it. Instead, she slid into her car and drove off without a sound, like a defeated general leaving a battlefield she no longer recognized. In the days that followed, the street felt lighter. The HOA newsletter started including useful things like gardening tips instead of passive-aggressive rules about mailbox symmetry. Ray, our new president, hosted an actual community coffee morning with donuts and no citations. Kids played louder, flags waved longer. Life resumed. As for me, I added a new sign to the sauna door. Clean wood, crisp, black letters. Trespassers will be skunked. Neighbors loved it. Some took selfies with it. One family even brought me a little carved gnome holding a canister labeled Justice Juice. It sat proudly beside the sauna, a trophy made of cedar and pettiness. The story of the sauna became legend, shared at block parties, whispered by kids, and referenced every time someone suggested repainting the mailboxes. I hadn't just defended my space, I'd accidentally inspired a movement. A neighborhood reborn through satire, strategy, and synthetic skunk. Still, as peaceful as it now seemed, I knew the truth. Someone always tries to fill a power vacuum. That's the nature of these places. One Karen leaves and somewhere down the road another clipboard starts twitching. But this time we were ready. No more silence, no more letting things slide, and me. I had backup cameras, reinforced locks, community support, and yes, plenty of skunk left in the tank. The neighborhood didn't just return to normal, it got better. The block party was proof. No one whispered at the edges anymore. No more cold stares or worried glances toward driveways. Kids ran wild with chalk and Nerf guns. Susan grilled ribs so good they made Harold tear up, and Chad organized a cornhole tournament with brackets printed like it was March Madness. Even Ray, clipboard in hand, though purely ceremonial now, laughed with the rest of us. Someone made t-shirts that said "Skunk happens" with a little sauna icon on the back. We didn't talk about Karen. We didn't have to. Her absence was felt in the music volume, in the relaxed way people spoke, in the uncut grass that no longer triggered handwritten warnings. "It's amazing what silence sounds like after years of screaming," Ray said, raising a plastic cup to the crowd. We all toasted, not to spite, but to peace, earned, not given. The sauna took on a life of its own. It became a landmark, not just a structure, but a story, a reminder. They started calling it the Freedom Fog. One neighbor, whose kid had been fined once for drawing a smiley face in sidewalk chalk, brought over a homemade sign that read, "No Karens allowed, ever." The kids made smaller versions with crayons and taped them to their bikes. Someone gifted me a candle labeled "Victory Mist." It smelled like eucalyptus and mild vengeance. I put it on the sauna shelf, right next to the laminated HOA letter that once cited me for visual disharmony. Now it was all harmony. The sauna glowed each night, its cedar walls reflecting more than heat. They reflected the community's resilience. Not because I won a petty war, but because I stood still when pushed and laughed when they expected me to yell. People started asking me how I pulled it off. Did you ever worry it would backfire? What if the HOA sided with her? Truth is, I didn't know it'd work. I just knew I couldn't let someone else rewrite the definition of peace. I didn't fight with fists. I fought with facts and funk, with cameras and calm, with skunk scent and surgical satire. The lesson wasn't about retaliation, it was about resistance. Smart, lawful, humorous resistance, not just against Karens, but against the creeping idea that being loud and confident makes someone right. It doesn't. Respect does. Proof does. Neighbors do. If this whole thing taught us anything, it's that humor paired with truth is a sledgehammer against entitlement. You don't have to scream to win. Sometimes all you need is a diffuser and a plan. So now I turn it to you. Have you ever dealt with an HOA horror story? A clipboard-wielding tyrant? A passive-aggressive neighbor who treated the sidewalk like sacred ground? Share it in the comments. You never know. Your tale might be the next chapter we bring to life. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future stories of neighborhood justice, comedy, and redemption. We've got more coming, because for every silent sauna in the world, there's a Karen itching to barge in, and we're here to make sure they don't. Because in the end, a fence can block noise, but it's truth that keeps peace. This was never just about a sauna. It was about drawing a line, not with aggression, but with clarity. A line that said, "This is mine, and your rules stop at the curb." It's for every war vet, every single mom, every quiet neighbor who just wants to live without citations for mismatched patio furniture. This is for you. For us. For everyone who's ever had to stand up to someone with a clipboard and no clue. Don't just follow the rules, understand them. And when someone misuses them, don't shout, just skunk with style. And while you're here, hit that like button, drop your stories below, and subscribe for more tales where the little guy wins, one smug step at a time.